It is Hospitality and Politics. I am Andrew Ridgie. This show is powered by the New York City Hospitality Alliance. And I was just saying to everyone, I am very, very excited to have Elizabeth Murray of the Marlow Collective here in the seat, who's been a friend, as she reminded me, for a long time. So this conversation is just going to flow.
Ready.
You're ready. All right. So Liz, really just to set it up, because I know you and a lot of people know you, but if someone didn't know you, who are you and what is the Marlow Collective?
So probably first, I'm a Houstonian. I'm a Texan. That's usually where I start. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Marlow Collective. I've been with Andrew Tarlow and his group, our group, for over 8 years now.
Time flies.
Definitely flies very quickly. Those 2-3 years in COVID really are like a black hole I think we all fell into and came out and we're like, wow, somehow it's been 6 years. I've been CEO. I started in, people and operations, and then I've been COO since 22, so about 3-4 years. I'm also on the board of the Hospitality Alliance.
That you are.
On a number of other boards of organizations I care deeply about. I come from a very service oriented family. That was deeply ingrained in me from a young age. So try to give.
That makes, I actually didn't know that. I mean, I know you're so service oriented and we'll talk about all the good work that you're involved in, but I didn't know that that was ingrained in you.
Yeah. My grandfather ran a company of strangely about the size of the company that I help run now.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And was like small businessman of the year in Houston. And,
nice.
On every association and his I think that need, it goes both ways. It's reciprocal, right? Like the need to invest in the community and the need to be held by a community very closely. It's like in my bloodstream.
Got it. So the Marlow Collective, Andrew Tarlow's collective of restaurants. What are the restaurants that you own and operate? Yeah,
we have 4. Diner, which was born on New Year's Eve, 98. So that's our oldest. It's 26, I guess. Romans, which is in Fort Greene, Achilles Heel in Greenpoint, and Borgo, the newest, which is just like in a week, a year old.
That's amazing.
27th in Manhattan. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right.
Incredible.
So people, I probably like in our industry know, and people that go out and eat, but like, I feel like Diner in particular, but all of these restaurants are really meaningful in the Brooklyn restaurant. Yeah. And like really a lot of people, I guess, credit Andrew and the team. I hate even say it, the Brooklyn restaurant of what it is, but like, can you explain a little bit of like the origins, just the beginning, and then we'll start getting into
Andrew jokes that like when he and Mark opened Diner that you could have like lit a car on fire in the middle of the street in Williamsburg and no one would have noticed.
Yeah, because it's right down the street of Peter Luger's, and that's like what was there for years, but there wasn't the Williamsburg Brooklyn restaurant scene that we think and know of today, and Diner was really at the
and I think it speaks to like building the thing that you need, right? So Andrew lived down Broadway in a loft and worked at the Odeon, and the space came up. The neighborhood that Diner is in was like really industrial, lots of truckers. And there was a woman who owned a diner and would serve the guys who were driving trucks every day. And she was like lunch, and she was getting out of the business and offered Andrew and Mark the space. And they're like, yeah, we'll do it. I think Andrew was like in his, mid-20s. And then when it opened, it was instantly busy, right? And all these artists were living in lofts in the neighborhood. No one was like, because they weren't supposed to be living there. Everyone was like very under the radar and low key about it. But then people started coming out, and it just like instantly built this, or I guess just created space for people who are already in that community and living there to gather, which, our restaurants have continued to do. And I think one of the cool things about Borgo is, even though it's our first Manhattan restaurant and a lot has been made of like the crossing the river, that it actually feels very much like a neighborhood restaurant, right? Like I think we hear over and over from diners and guests that, oh, this feels so intimate and warm. And obviously that makes us very happy because that's what we're trying to do over and over.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing how restaurants provide, we always talk about it, like it's obviously incredible food and drinks and hospitality, but they're these social gathering spaces. And when you have these neighborhoods that have these artists and creative types and, you know, they're kind of on the cusp of something's going to change, restaurants come in, they provide those social spaces, they create jobs, they create like an energy.
Critical.
And absolutely critical. And it's just so amazing to see like where, you know, the restaurant scene in Brooklyn has come, that neighborhood, you know, since 98. I remember like through the early 2000s. And then, like you said, crossing the bridge, going into Manhattan, Borgo, which is absolutely amazing and people should go, but top 50 restaurants in the New York Times just within the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, this year. You know, we were together earlier this week and I listening to a number of speakers, but one, Rory Sutherland, and I thought one of the incredible things he said was that in this industry, our only, like the thing we're actually selling is emotional response, right? And I think, or we know that all of the like long-standing community connectors in this country have started to fray or have completely frayed, and people's engagement, you know, I was talking a little bit about service and civic engagement, but people being held in those spaces, even by family, you know, it's just this thing has shifted. And so I think more and more cultural institutions, in particular ones you not like one you go to once a year, but one you go to all the time and see the same people there, not just as other diners in your community, but also the people who are taking care of you and being taken care of in that way. Like for me, and I would say for our organization, it's not just that. It is the emotional response. It is the emotional resonance that hopefully it holds in a community and then enables us to hold communities together through, you know, challenging times, including, you know, like COVID or some of the stuff we're going through now.
This is one of like the reasons actually I love you, because you get like deep right away. You know.
Let's fucking go, Andrew.
All right. So I was walking over here and I was trying to like think how to explain, because like also said I've known you for a long time and you know people, you like see them grow you know, personally, professionally. And I think one of the things that I've always, you know, admired and I find really interesting, especially like being chief operating officer, you know, having to make these executive decisions, having to manage all of these different employees with different opinions, different needs, making sure the business is actually run, taking care of the guests. I know, it's like giving your side.
Yeah,
like,
I'm like,
thinking about it. That's what I was thinking. It was like, I was saying, I find you to be very idealistic, but at the same time, very realistic.
Thank you.
And you're able to somehow balance
really
the two. And I think that kind of goes into the concepts of Marlow Collective restaurants. It goes into like the ethos and the culture. So how do you, as a, you know, professional who has a responsibility to the business, manage being idealistic, which I think is important in the restaurant industry because it is about that human connection, people
and it's
enjoying
creative,
themselves.
Right? Like you need that it's fuel for the
but then sometimes
fire.
It also like smacks up against like, okay,
all
here are all the laws, here's, you know, the finances, here's the operational systems. How do you stay idealistic and realistic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said right? Because I think for me, those are two pieces of one whole. I think we get in a lot of trouble when we cleave things into binary, either or. For me, they feed into each other, and it's a constant balancing act. Andrew and I say to each other all the time this great quote from Succession. That's Siobhan Roy is like talking to her dad and she's like, I'm trying to get us all aligned here. And he's like, nothing is aligned. Everything everywhere is always moving. Get used to it.
That's great.
Right? So it is this, I would say, and none of this happens in a vacuum or in the vacuum of myself, right? This is all like in relationship within our organization and with external partners. But one of the pendulum swings back and forth, right? I mean, I think, and everyone experienced this to some extent, but in COVID, the lean in we had to do to take care of our people and to keep people, I think I'll speak for us, probably we like leaned a little too far, right? And sort of stopped holding or being realistic about some of the boundaries we had. And I think, we've done that in other times too, like trying to, like removing tipping, right?
We're going to get back. We're going to get into that.
But I do, I think it's multifaceted. I have huge dreams. Andrew has huge dreams. The people who work alongside us likewise for what's possible. And I think in part it's like, okay, what is possible within that, and always trying to like have both a long-term vision and then short-term strategies to get there. And like I was saying, a lot of that happens in partnership, right? So like we have you and the Alliance doing all this incredible work at like the city and state level, right? When we really think about how we like make policy that makes sense and work in partnership with government to make policy that makes sense for us. We have Carolyn and Glenn and Fox Rothschild from the labor and employment side, who are like constantly working with us from a one size fits one mindset of like how we hold our culture and our people, right? You have to be realistic and hold people accountable to the expectations you have for them.
Well, how do you do that with employees? So, you have all different employees, some are there because it's their career. They just want to be in the restaurant industry. Some people are there, maybe they're going to school or pursuing something else and work a couple nights to make money, or it's here to get to somewhere else. How do you create systems, or what systems have you created that allows you to allow work employees to have that flexibility, that creativity, but also make sure that they are accountable to the business and see a future for themselves if they want to stay with the restaurant?
In a lot of different ways, right? So I would say in terms of accountability, in a best case scenario, it's something we're doing early and often.
Okay.
Right. We have a really robust, like first 90 days onboarding system that we've developed that brings people in, hopefully gives people a lot of opportunities to express if they're not getting the resources, training that they need to be successful long term. And then if they are, and we feel good about the way we've trained them, we have like a 90-day check-in. It's a clear opportunity for like direct feedback with our HR business partner and their managers. And then we kind of move from there, right? Communication and trying to balance the people who are like, I really just want to come in and like punch in and punch out and leave, with the people who are like, I'm here long term. I want this to be my career. We see more of that now than we used to, right? Like I think people widely see this as a career, even more so than when I started like 10 or 12 years ago. One of the things we know from data is that people from historically marginalized communities are less likely to raise their hand and say, I'm ready to grow.
Okay.
Right. So one of the responsibilities I think we have as a company, to the extent that we're able to, is to identify talent, develop, advance, promote that talent into leadership roles. Like we have a really diverse group of talent at our manager and executive level roles, so that then there's representation, which matters. So that people can say, oh, I see this person in this role, and it's easier for me to raise my hand and say I want to grow in that way. And for people to recognize talent that maybe looks like them and encourage them to raise their hand, or encourage them and say, like, you can actually, like, you can be an executive too. Like I think about this in my COO role. I was laughing with another female executive on Monday that like we kind of take a picture, like most of the Zooms I'm on still, I'm like, in the biz dev Zooms, the lease negotiation, the hardcore stuff, not the soft skill stuff. Often I'm like either the only woman or one of two women on the call. Right. So I think it matters. I think we can't talk about how we make space for people to grow in an organization without talking about or make space for people to grow in the ways they want without talking about what that looks like for people is different.
So what does it actually feel like to be a female executive on one of these calls where there's just maybe you?
Yeah.
Like, how do you view your role? Do you feel comfortable, or you're just like another person on the call? Sorry if this is like a stupid question, or is like, do you feel like, it's an important question. Like, obviously you're cognizant, like, I'm the female here. Like, how do you interpret? How do you move forward? Like, does it make you hesitant?
No.
Do you have to focus on, I'm going to make sure I step in and make my voice heard? Like, how does it is it different? Because I think, like, as a man, you're on a call and it's a bunch of other men, you just talk normal and you're not as aware of being like, oh yeah, like, I'm one man amongst five men. But if you're the single, whatever it may be.
Exactly. You do think about it.
You do think about it, and it may affect how you interact in that conversation. So do you take certain steps, to interject in certain ways that maybe as a man, I wouldn't necessarily even
Well, I will tell you, I am the first in my immediate family and the first of a generation. So I'm like, by birth order but from the kind of family I grew up in, which really encouraged a lot of the challenging dialogue, right? I grew up in a family that liked to debate, politics and art and current events. And so I just grew up in it with in an environment that probably gave me a lot of skills to navigate that thing more comfortably. I do feel a lot of responsibility for representing my gender on those calls, or in those spaces in general, or even in that work, right? Like when you think about sort of there are just less women who are GCs or who are doing high level biz dev than there are men, frankly. And then I got to give Andrew a lot of credit because he makes so much space for me and has taught me so much and has never, it's just been he's been an incredible leader to learn from and grow alongside and support in his vision of what the company should be or could be. So I would say those are probably the big three things. But of course I feel a responsibility for it.
Within the company, you mentioned, making sure that all different employees, feel confident enough, or there's an openness to say, okay, I'm ready to move up, or I wanted to bring up this issue. Obviously, you can't be in the kitchen on the dining room floor all the time. So are there specific systems you have in place to track those people that are going above and beyond, that there are other talents that they could maybe grow into a managerial role, or, on the flip side, that there's issues, whether they're showing up late or they're doing something inappropriate? Like, how do you track, if you do, and measure and then make business decisions, for employees on that data?
Yeah. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
Like we don't collect data in a way where you're like, oh, this person sells more than everyone else every night, or, it's a little more high touch than that, maybe. One thing I'll say that I think we do well and probably different than most organizations is that we're relatively flatter than most, right? So there's a lot of day-to-day contact between our back office team, our executive team, and frontline managers, and even down to frontline workers, depending on the business and how much time we're in the space. And that kind of mentorship at the frontline manager role, which I think, and we've talked about this, it's that's really where so much of that work happens, right? Like, how are our frontline managers empowered to recognize and develop and reward talent? And then how are we helping people who are new at that recognize and do those things, right? Where I think a system or things on paper are great, but in my experience, and in particular in this industry, almost all of the transmission of that kind of knowledge or mentorship happens in conversation, in person. Like, the chefs aren't opening a spreadsheet and going
and inputting all the data. No, of course.
Right. They write us notes at the end of the night. And, over time, you learn more and more and more about how people are developing, where people are struggling. And then obviously we're all reading those all the time and offering support. And, we have systems for our agendas and expectations that people review them in advance and come prepared to discuss all these things, right? Just very normal best practices. But probably the biggest difference is that people have a lot of access to Andrew, to Jason, our director of restaurant ops, to myself, to our HR business partner, CFO, ops and accounting people.
What was that program? I remember at one of our board meetings, you were talking about some system or something you had in place. I don't know if I'm just something with points or.
Oh, that's an accountability system. Yeah, we did post-COVID. Probably around 21, not even 22, 23, we started to see a major increase in lateness, call outs, time and attendance issues. And we developed a point system in partnership with our attorneys, because in New York City and state, there's a lot of laws about how to do that fairly and compliantly. And it just helps us, I think that's kind of what we were talking about, that ebb and flow or give and take between like, we want to invest so deeply in our people. And if you can't show up on time and show up consistently to work, we can't do it.
Yeah. And if especially in such a team environment where like everyone's, relying on each other.
And for the most part, these are small businesses, right? Like our Brooklyn restaurants are 40 to 50 employees. Our Manhattan restaurant now, Borgo's 100 probably, but like,
still a small business.
It has a huge, yes. And it has a huge, when people don't show up, it's like, it just has a huge impact.
I actually, last night I was leaving an event and then I bumped into a chef friend randomly on the train platform. And he was saying, that, and I wonder if this is happening, if you're seeing it, that younger people, the people were talking a lot of crap about like younger people. And I think obviously all the shakeup and craziness of the pandemic and some of the issues you were talking about, something just happened where people weren't coming out. They were showing up late. Just a lot of things were different. But he said that he's actually more recently hired a handful of young people, he said, that were like really into the industry and like really, it almost felt like it was kind of a throwback to a time like where they really wanted to get, and they were really serious. They wanted careers in the industry.
That's so great.
Have you seen like?
I don't think so.
Okay.
For the last year, we've really been focused on recruiting through our workforce development partners. So like shout out to Hot Bread Kitchen, Emma's Torch, Drive Change, less so Food Education Fund, because a lot of their kids wonderfully go into college.
Sure.
Less really young people, but that's awesome.
Yeah.
I think
I was great to hear. And I think so much of this, like kind of the ebbs and flows and, things just change in the world. And that obviously impacts the restaurants.
Well, and I think it's more like the faster you recognize changes in the talent pool or in the market for talent that's available to you and move. This is happening not in one of our restaurants, but in our bakery right now. And just like addressing the shift in the talent that they're recruiting. Like the faster you make systems to attract, develop, and retain the people you have access to, the more successful you're going to be. That's the whole game, right? So whether it's like I was saying, we're largely recruiting or prioritizing recruiting from workforce development programs, plus just the people who reach out and say like, I want to come trail or whatever. Or it's like, I'm getting all these young kids who are really like, we talk about Larry Bird walking through the door. Like that's a moment where like, wow, you have young, invested, psyched talent who like wants to come work 50 hours a week and just crush it. Awesome. Like what, my next thought would be like, okay, great. That's a sweet spot. What can you do with that? Right. It's like,
all right, tipping. So
here we go.
You decided, or the restaurant group decided, along with, not together with, but at a time where there was a bunch of different New York City restaurants that decided to not take the tip credit and eliminate tipping, or basically just create different types of compensation models for particularly front of house, but it also did impact back of house workers as well. And for the most part, with the exception of, you probably count on one hand, if that, restaurants that still have those no
Amanda
tipping.
Dirt Candy's still doing it.
There's very few like reverted back, taking the tip credit, bring back tipping. Marlow Collective restaurants went through
we gave it our best
process.
Shot, buddy.
You worked really hard to do it. So can you talk a little bit? I think everyone was trying to do it for, the right reasons, and then figured out like for various reasons it didn't work. So I guess first, like, why did you try to transition to this no tip credit, no tipping model? And then we can talk a little bit what happened and why you transitioned back.
Yep. Well, it's the why is multifaceted. So I was also working at Marlow. None of our systems. We took 2 restaurants gratuity free. I'd also worked for Danny and been heavily involved in taking Gramercy Tavern through hospitality included.
That's Danny Meyer's restaurants, Union Square Hospitality Group. Which had a lot of impact on the way the back of house was paid in a positive way, right? Like we know that front of house employees have seen exponential growth in their wages over time because we raise prices because of inflation, or among other reasons, and because front of house employees receive tips on increasing prices, their wages increase exponentially. Back of house has not seen that. So over time, obviously,
this has happened.
Yeah, disparity
right?
in wages between the front of the house workers
Correct.
and back of the house.
Has grown and will continue to grow because prices will continue to increase and they'll continue to be tipped on those things. Not to mention that their base wage is also going up all the time, right? So that was one reason. That's a huge reason that ultimately, I think if you look at a system where people are working in concert and cooperation every night towards one goal, and one person walks out and makes $65 an hour and the other person walks out making $22 an hour, that like doesn't feel very good.
Yeah.
And causes a lot of problems, and can cause a lot of problems in a culture. It's not acknowledged and handled pretty carefully. The other reason was that was a period when New York was dramatically increasing the minimum wage, right? And so restaurants were trying to figure out, how do we increase this minimum wage in a way that will make it sustainable to continue to run this business, right? I mean, I think small and medium-sized businesses are the ones that get squished in those major changes. Not that they shouldn't happen, not that wage increases don't need to happen, of course, but navigating it as a small and medium-sized business is incredibly challenging. Yeah.
Okay. So what was the cause for bringing it? So you tried, what was the model? So everyone basically, you increased menu prices and then everybody got paid a flat wage versus a base wage plus their tips if they're in the front of the house?
Correct.
And why did it not work?
And it was like a revenue share model,
So all the money came in and then based on
and we never even got to a place where we could include the back of house in that revenue share.
Okay.
At Marlow.
And why not? Because the front of house people, I
dumbed this down to price elasticity isn't perfect. Yeah. I mean, I think depending again on the kind of business you run, right? If you are, a very high end tasting menu restaurant where people are walking in expecting to spend $1,000 versus a neighborhood restaurant where a burger goes from like $18 to $28, right? Like the value proposition is different. The expectations are different. So just baseline, it had the raising prices where we needed to, just not even high enough to actually make a profit so we could continue to do the experiment, had such negative impact on demand that total revenue decreased. So we increased prices, but our total revenue decreased.
Well, that's, I think, too, the value proposition. And there's just people associated with burgers or certain types of food, are they getting a deal? They're willing to pay whatever. But what was interesting is, even if people, I remember, even if people ultimately at the end of the meal would pay about the same, they valued.
People don't think about their tip. So this is the other thing. People have like two pockets, right? Yeah. It's like, I pay the bill and that's what I think about. I mean, I do this myself.
Yeah.
I went to a restaurant last night. I looked at the bill and I went boop. And then it was like tip 25%. And I don't even pay any attention to it. And it's not like I'm like, I mean, I'm not combing through and going, oh, that was a $30 tip. I just, people see the cost on the bill and that's what they associate. And so the 20% that you're adding onto it, or 22 or 25, whatever, is like imaginary money.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a fascinating experience.
Yeah. And just human psychology.
In terms of human psychology, and just behavioral psychology, right? But as a business strategy, I would say it was not successful.
Yeah, and people you think about it. I remember a lot of people were saying, like a couple would come in, instead of each ordering an appetizer, they'd split an appetizer. Instead of a bottle of wine, they'd have a glass of wine. Instead of, dessert, they just forego dessert. So seeing those higher prices, it may not logically make sense, but it's just how people, behave.
Yeah, I mean, the other interesting thing is like people don't want to go, like we also run restaurants that buy directly from farmers, right? Like I know people say they do that. We actually do that, right? So we should have learned this before gratuity free, but like people don't care.
Yeah.
I don't mean just like they're making some, and I'm generalizing here, right? There are some people who really care, but most people like have some sense of like, oh, they work with farmers, right? great. But they don't want you to sit at the table and be like, oh, and we work, unless you have a great story. You know, they just don't, people don't want to go. I mean, that's not why they're there. They're there to be entertained.
That was even, I mean, I remember, you know, talking, it was probably around the time Diner, like, you know, late 90s and early 2000s. It was when it was like a really novel thing, working with local farmers, talking about it. But I think when it comes to like sustainability, people either, you know, don't care, or they just kind of expect, like, you know, this is a quality restaurant. They're working with local farmers, you know, it's quality product, proteins, vegetables. And that's just something that they've, you know, come to expect, but it's not like why they're shopping. They're not going and seeing like, okay, who's purchasing locally?
No. And guess what people want to talk about even less when they're at the dinner table? The politics of the way the people who are serving them are being paid.
Yes. Yes.
They really don't want to talk about that when they're at dinner. So it's like, you know, I mean, what are you going to do? Like shove down your diners or guests' throats? Like this, you know, it just doesn't, ultimately it doesn't work. And I think there's place, you know, obviously you could point to California. It's had some, you know, everyone's paid a regular wage, you know, they've eliminated the sub-minimum wage there. It's like, there are places that maybe you could argue it works, although long term, I think you can see there, it's like there's a lot of restaurants in California that are struggling.
It's a disaster. I mean, everyone tells me, I mean, even like Los Angeles, and you know, it's always like a lot of different, you know, pressures. And I know a lot of people that have been fighting out there trying to, you know, get the tip credit, you know, like one reinstated or put in place. But it's just, it's so fascinating because people are just so interested in like just restaurant operations and tipping. But I think it's also so ingrained in the American culture. When we look at like the tip credit, for example, you know, we always talk about it, but you have to basically, with no tip credit in New York, it would cost about $12,000 or so more to employ each full-time tipped employee annually. So you could think for you know, a small restaurant could be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. For the larger restaurant group, it could be in the millions. And the amount that you would have to increase prices is astronomical, and then it deters people. And then like with the no tipping, I remember people that worked front of house, they went from, you know, getting tips to getting no tips, and under the no tips, they got that straight base wage that was maybe higher than what they used to get, but their overall earnings, because they weren't getting tips, shrunk. And then they went to the restaurant across the street where they could still earn their tips and made more money.
We had an unbelievable outflow of talent in the couple of years that we were doing that. I mean, I think, you know, we can intellectualize it. Like we can go all the way, people who like study the industry, if it's interesting, like you can go all the way back to the history and write theses and, you know, do incredible research on how we ended up here. And I think there's value in that, right? We should understand our history and we should understand why we're here. And we have to, it's like this, the theme of this conversation is, right, like holding the balance of those things. And it's like, yes, and we also have to be, you know, I help run a company that employs 300 people and we offer really good jobs, right? Like we have benefits at the level of like more than most corporate employees get at the ages of the people we employ. So, and we have to hold that in practice, the behavioral psychology I experienced going through this process across multiple organizations was that people like to pay less for food and then tip their service staff. And the relationship they have between those two pockets of money is not rational.
It's not, because I mean, people even say, you know, they like, I don't want to tip, just charge me more. But then if you actually do that, they actually don't like it.
So we can go through the thought experiment and the understand, you know, that's what I mean. Like, that's all valuable, right? But then we also have to live in reality, which is, 100%. It doesn't work. And, you know, we can either hold fast to like our belief in why this thing is not great and then close a business and let the 45 people who work there go, or we can go, we tried this. It was an experiment, which we deeply believed in. And I think experimenting like that across all different facets of business is critical for, you know, the evolution of our industry. And it didn't work. And so we have to be real about that and talk about why and share why so that we're all learning together and then like move on to the next experiment.
I hear you.
Including like being in real conversation, and this is, you know, why one of the reasons I love the Alliance, in being in real conversation with our elected officials as business leaders and owners and job creators about what does work, what doesn't work, what we've learned, so that we're not just recreating like bad experiments over and over again.
Yeah, no, it's so important. I mean, to sit down and then you start actually looking at the numbers, like you said, you can tell a story, you can weave a narrative, you can tell a history.
Yeah.
You can be all
valid.
But at the end of the day, there's the practical experience of implementing it. And it has to work for a business.
And like, if the option is we close this business and term these 45 people who currently have, heavily subsidized medical, dental, vision insurance, 2 weeks of paid time off, front loaded every year, 401k access, an emergency assistance fund, great discounts, like including at our grocery store and bakery. Like, those are good jobs with like decent wages. Yeah. And so the option is like these 45 people will be out of work, or we can hold on to our deals. And I just, we chose to keep our businesses open.
I think that's a very wise move, and I'm happy you did.
Thank you. Me too.
So going out. So let me ask you, when you go out to restaurants, so moving away from your restaurant, so you get some time, you go out, like what's the first thing? I know. I love it. What do you look for when you walk into someone else's restaurant? I know you're trying to go enjoy yourself, but I also know you probably can't help but doing like a little work and looking.
Can I tell you what?
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't?
No.
How?
I just don't. I
You're
don't know.
able to turn off.
I just turn off. I just experience. I'm not, every once in a while, there are moments where I'm like, wow, we've been finished with dinner for 20 minutes and we still don't have the check. And I'd really like to get up from this fucking table and give it back to you. And move on with my night too. Of course I have all those things. And I've seen behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But it's fun to not break the fourth wall. It's like, if you can't just experience it and be like carried away by the joy of what we do, God, it'd be hard to do it.
So what is a wonderful dining experience for you? And I just am like, I'm
so driven by gratitude that actually my default is gratitude. Yeah. So usually I'm just so fucking happy to like be at dinner with someone I care about, eating something great. Like that moment, I was at Commerce Inn last night, which I'll say is like one of my favorite restaurants in the city. I even love walking up to there. Everything about it to me is beautiful and perfect. And that moment when you like have a drink, you've decided what you're going to order, you put your order in, and then the rest of it is them. And just watching how that unfolds. I have thoughts and opinions about all of it, right? But they're probably not so critical. It's probably just like, oh, interesting. Okay. And like, why'd you take my bread away when I might still, all those things. But like, for the most part, I'm just like, wow, this is like magic. And I just can't even believe I get to do this for a living. So did you work on that as like a personal matter? Because I feel like so many people. It's in my blood. That's interesting. Yeah. My great grandmother, it's like, I was born this way. Okay. I think I'm positive and full of joy. Yeah. No, because I talk with a lot of people that it's very hard to turn off. And especially in this business when it's nights, weekends, holidays, there's always some fire to put out at the restaurant. Andrew's definitely more like, yeah, he's got a lot of thoughts and opinions. You dine with him, and I worked with great operators too, who like had to sit with their back towards the room because they didn't want to watch. Someone else, like, yes, I know. I get it, but I'm like, I'm just not built that way. Well, when I go, like people are like, oh, come over, I'll talk, and I'll go to their restaurant. But I actually don't really. I mean, I go, but I don't love going and having conversations with people at their own restaurants. Oh yeah, because it is so difficult for them to be in the moment because like you look at their eyes and they're like this, and I know something's always going on. They want to be there for the conversation. So it's like, why don't we just go someone else's place? So you can at least kind of step back a little bit and you're not in the middle of it. Also, I think, at your own, or I'll say, and I think I, learned a little bit from Andrew that like there's a couple ways to approach this, right? Like you can come in and you're going to see 25 things that piss you off or you're like, well, that's wrong and that's wrong. And you can either be like that, approach life with that mindset, or you can come in and like see all those things and then maybe mention like two of the most important ones to the GM or the chef the next day. Or, Jason, our incredible director of restaurant ops. But like, ultimately you have to like, you have to let the people do the thing. Yeah. And when I'm in our businesses having dinner, I want our staff to see that I'm happy and enjoying myself. Like forget the other restaurants I go to, but I want them to see me feeling happy because I know it's a reflection on the hard work that they've done to make everything that has happened for me in that moment and everyone dining around me as magical as it is, right?
Well, it probably puts them more at ease as well versus if they knew you were sitting there looking at every little thing they're doing and criticizing them, you know, they're going to be worse. They're going to be more nervous.
I'm like, no, y'all are amazing.
So working with all different people, going out, what do you think the traits of a good, obviously there's a lot of them, but what are like positive traits of restaurateurs, chefs? Like how do you create this environment? Are there a few things that pop out that you're like, these are kind of
4 big values. And I've recently realized I think they're tactics.
Okay.
They are courage, curiosity, gratitude, and service.
Okay.
And I've like had them forever. Like you know, I think you have to invest. You need to spend some time. It's a valuable exercise to spend some time investigating truly, like what are the major underpinnings of my philosophy of how to live. Yeah. Right. But I was like, I was telling my friend Anne, I think courage is maybe a tactic towards resilience.
I like resilience.
Right. But like, how do you build resilience? Oh, you face challenge with courage. Right. Because a lot of the times the only way out is through. Yeah. And when you get through, you've gained all these other things, including what happens on a team when you get through. Right. That ultimately resilience is the product of courage. Right. And like joy, living a life full of joy for me, that is like gratitude is the practice that leads there. I don't think I do any of these things consciously. Yeah. Right. Like I wish I could say like, oh, you know, like you were asking earlier, do I make that? It's not conscious. Okay. But I think these ultimately are like, I thought they were my values, but I think like community is a value and service is the tactic that like being in service to other people is actually the tactic that holds me in community.
I like that.
Right.
It's interesting stuff.
Crazy, huh?
I know. It's fascinating how so many of these, I don't even know what to call them, you know, tactics and building culture, but so much of it is part of the restaurant industry. And I think more so, I mean, I don't know because I don't talk to as many people in like other industries, but I mean, I know everyone always talks about like culture, but I do think there is something about the restaurant industry because you were so labor intensive and people were working closely together, providing experience for other people, you know, other businesses, you don't have it. If you're an accountant or a lawyer, you know, you interact with other people, but in a different way than when you're working in a restaurant. And even in a retail store, the transaction period is much shorter. You know, maybe you ask someone about a product and they tell you quickly, or you just pick something off the shelf, you go to the counter, you pay for it. Where in the restaurant, it's an extended experience with all different touch points, all around different types of experience around food. Yeah.
Dude, can I tell you? Yeah. I think the work we do is sacred care work.
I agree.
I know that sounds like talk about idealism. Like that's like my, but it's realistic. I've just like gone into the stars with that one. But it is true. This to me, what happens at a table, like the space we hold, the space we create and then hold for people to be in community with each other and people who are different from them, who they don't, you know, it's like, we're, you know, if you're a regular, whatever, but like most of the time, you're allowing strangers to take care of some of your most intimate needs. And sometimes at like your most intimate or vulnerable moments, it is sacred care work, right? And when you expand that, not just the place it holds, like I was saying earlier, because of the ways that our society has transformed over the last 75 years, the place that restaurants or dining spaces that hold in our country is so much more. And when you layer on top of that we're the second largest private employing industry in the country, like, dude, I can't imagine a more important, meaningful space to work in, to create in, to ideate in. And again, like, this is the really out there version of it. It's also like, right, people are people and they
But
people.
listen, but you know what? Because it's a people industry, I always say, for better or worse, all different aspects of society happen within the four walls of restaurants because it's a people business. And like, that's how people always got together, like around food to talk about things with their family. It is something that's different than others. Yes, it's part of commerce and all the economic impact, but it's like the social interaction.
Which is, and that's like, Mike, I come to this. I was becoming an economist when I that's actually how, in a very roundabout way, I got into this industry. And so like you also, you have to have this vision of what the thing is and hold that whole big possibility and also underpin it with the economics and the business realities and the, human behavior and the psychology of it. And like all of that and balancing that amongst and with a team, like, a lot of our team has been in this company for a long time. It's just such cool work. Fulfilling work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just talking about like the economics of it. So, I always think about it. In New York City, 5-borough wide, there's about 29,000 eating and drinking establishments. Yeah. They employ about 300,000 people from all walks of life.
Yes.
Where it's the industry where you could, have a, doctorate, or you could have no education at all, and you can find an opportunity and you can work hard and you can grow and you could also be like fulfilled. I'm always fascinated how many people, you said you wanted to be an economist, like how many people have come from other industries into restaurants because they have this like underlying just driving passion for it. And then other people just fall into it because they don't know what else is out there. And like, oh, I can get a job there and I can make money. And
the barrier to entry is incredibly low.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great thing. And then I think about the, billions of dollars of economic impact. And we talk about how that funds all these essential services, the taxes, just picking up the garbage and firefighters and police and health departments, and all these things that we kind of take for granted almost on a day-to-day basis. So much of that is being funded because we have a vibrant restaurant industry, a vibrant hospitality industry. And that is something that really can't be overstated. And I think
and that we remain a city that really is rooted in small and, I'm not to be like technical about it, but essentially small businesses.
It is.
Right. And continues to provide opportunity for people to like come up through a restaurant and open one, right? Like I think it is really in so many ways the economic engine of the city. Switching
gears quickly. Operations.
Yeah.
So obviously multiple different restaurants, you have to have systems. Like it's clear how much of that human touch and just talking to people and being present and learning what's going on in the businesses and then basically responding to that is important. But
as quickly as possible.
But then also like there has to be certain systems in place. Are there like one or two, standard operating procedures or something that you can think of that you do in the restaurants that you think has been really effective? Like, I don't know exactly what it would be. But
I'll give you two that are like the most nitty gritty. One, we collapsed all of our HR systems into one. I don't totally understand what a tech stack is. I think I do, but like everything's in one place, right? So onboarding, all employee files, scheduling, timekeeping, payroll, all in one system.
Got it.
It makes a much easier and more seamless, frictionless user experience for our employees for the amount of tech that they have to interface with and learn. And then much easier for our operators to have sort of a one-stop shop for that. It also enables things like the point system that I was talking about because the schedules in we work with Paycom. The schedules in Paycom and then the timekeeping system, because they're also clocking in, can read the schedule. Like managers don't have to go, oh, you're an hour late. The schedule knows you're an hour late.
Got it.
And then we moved all of our repairs and maintenance communication to Slack. We're not an all Slack org. Some of us would like to move to an all Slack org, but we have channels for each business. Everyone, all the managers, our facilities director, our ops and maintenance manager, Andrew, our director of restaurant ops, myself, our CFO even, everyone's on there. And it just enables us to respond so much faster.
Yeah.
And like sort of, again, as frictionless as possible. You don't have to go like, oh shit, I forgot to put this person on.
Yeah, there's 3 different text chains about the same thing.
Oh, we forgot the newest manager isn't on this email distro list yet. It just like it removes those issues. And so those are 2 like often in this business, the faster you can address something, the better. Yeah. And I think as the least friction, it's like the Savannah Banana guy was saying this. Like, how do you make all of those touch points as frictionless as possible? I think about that for employees.
Yeah, I remember why this was years ago, but there was somebody that studied, like the top 100, CEO interviews and magazines and books and everything. And they were trying to find common denominators, like what did these CEOs bring up most often? And the one thing was, how do you remove friction? How do you move friction, internally from your just operations? How do you remove friction from your guest or your customers' experience interacting and, purchasing whatever it is that you're selling. Last thing for you is, I know you said so many of these things are just like in your DNA and who you are as a person. But, working, with Danny in Union Square Hospitality Group, working with Andrew in the Marlow Collective, being involved. There's so many different organizations.
So many.
We didn't even get into that you're involved with, in addition to the Alliance that are doing really good, meaningful work. How have you seen yourself grow as a person and a professional through putting yourself out here in the industry, getting involved in these different philanthropic and important causes? Like, what have you learned and how have you
That's
grown?
Our last question.
And it has to be 30 seconds.
I can only answer this through the lens of my own personality and life experience. I'm a person who has an extremely high need for belonging. I think like first rule, know thyself, right? Because I think we're most responsible for meeting our own needs as humans. And then kind of like, if you're lucky, you get circles of things outside of that. I mean, I'm growing so much all the time. And I think it's also, I will say, here's the balance to that. Like that seems obvious to me. It's through relationship, right? Yeah. We develop each other. My development happens in relationship with you. My development happens in relationship to our HR business partner who I've worked next to every day for the last 8.5 years. We're developing each other, right? That's how I have grown here, because people have been willing to invest in me. Even this conversation helps me grow, right? All of that. I also honestly spend a lot of all of my like personal time. I spend very little of it like reading about the industry. Like I occasionally like dabble in a business book. Yeah. But I love art and music and I take classes at the Brooklyn Institute on things like Gothic feminism, right? So like that's how my brain works. And so for me, I'm growing in this industry through relationship and the sharing of ideas and like the continuation of these ideas in like communities of practice with other people who share, frankly, often very different ideas. That to me is very interesting. And then I need to feed myself with like art and culture. I spend a lot of time in museums and that kind of thing, and outside. Like I spent the whole last weekend camping with my girlfriends up in the mountains, right? I need that balance. For me, that's probably like how I have grown.
You're awesome.
Dude, you're awesome.
Hospitality and Politics, powered by the New York City Hospitality Alliance. I'm Andrew Ridgey. This is Liz Murray.
Here I am.
This is so much fun.
Ditto.
We'll keep talking.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.